BBC, in a spot of bother today, after a leaked internal memo suggested that a Panorama documentary had misled viewers by doctoring a speech given by Donald Trump in a way that made it seem like he was supporting the Capitol Hill riots that took place in January 2021. After that memo was obtained by the Telegraph, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, says heads must roll, and the House of Commons Culture, Media and Sport Committee says the BBC has serious questions to answer. Let's just hear the difference in what Donald Trump did say and the version that went out on the BBC. Here's what Donald Trump actually said back in 2021.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And this is the edited version that BBC Panorama used in 2024.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
Big difference. Hence the problems, hence the questions. David Elstein is former chief executive of Channel 5 and a former producer at the BBC. David, great to have you with us. How big a deal do you think this is?
Well, if it were just the Panorama on Donald Trump, it would be pretty serious. But the dossier that Michael Prescott sent to the whole of the BBC board, the 19-page dossier, lists 10 different ways in which the BBC's coverage of the Trump campaign raised questions about objectivity, impartiality, and bias. This particular documentary, it's reminiscent of what happened with the Gaza documentary. The Gaza documentary was made by an independent production company, and they did not tell the BBC the background of the boy who was narrating. Here, somebody at October Films, an independent production company, decided to splice together the different bits of the Trump speech, passed it back to the BBC without saying what they had done, without alerting the BBC, as far as I can see. And nobody at the BBC in the commissioning process said, hang on a minute, did this really happen? So the original fault lies with the production company, but the buck stops with the BBC. They're the broadcaster.
And it's the latest sort of controversy, the latest row that they've got involved in, David. Does it, as someone who worked there for some time, does it surprise you, these allegations?
Look, I worked on Panorama a long time ago, and nothing like this would ever have happened. But then it was all in-house production. The risks that you run when you commission an independent producer to make a current affairs program are high, and therefore your level of attention has to be high, and it clearly isn't high enough at the BBC. That's why the Gaza film got through. That's why this film got through. It is, of course, immensely depressing to discover the BBC stonewalling the revelation, saying, oh, well, we don't comment on leaked documents. I mean, honestly, that is pathetic. This is a really serious issue, and the BBC is going to have a lot of answering to do. And
there's not many answers forthcoming just yet, as you say, David. Is this just a case of sort of incompetence, of the systems not being perhaps what they should be, or do you think there is, has been alleged, a sort of systemic bias at the Beeb when it comes to things like Donald Trump and the Middle East?
Well, it's not just Donald Trump and the Middle East. It's Brexit. It's Rupert Murdoch. There's a number of things where, if it's on the BBC, I'm cautious about the editorial content. And what Michael Prescott, the guy who put together this dossier, listed was 10 other examples of the BBC's reporting of the Trump campaign or the Trump-Harris election. And all the bias was one way. All the problems were in one direction. And we know from the past that the BBC had a mindset which was very pro-European prior to Brexit, and they eventually produced a report admitting that. The evidence from Michael Prescott on Gaza coverage is also quite alarming. In particular, the BBC Arabic service, which most of us have known for a long time, is questionable in its impartiality and its reliability, and which, because it's now incorporated into BBC News more generally, which was a terrible mistake that the BBC made some years ago, taints the whole of BBC output. So there's a lot of questions across a range of issues, all of them pointing in the same direction. Is the BBC trustworthy?
David, appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. David Elstein, former Chief Executive of Channel 5, former producer at the BBC.